Have you ever felt frustrated with how reading is going with your kid? Do you feel like there's so much more potential or there's so many more things, maybe better things that I can do with my child? Well, if that's something that you've actually been frustrated by as a parent, maybe as a school teacher, listen to this awesome podcast we had a chance to record. Dr. Joseph Lockavitch, who has an awesome program, who he's going to talk about, we talked a lot about this concept of reading and our failure to teach properly, and to teach properly with our kids has more to do with the positives than the negatives, which obviously sounds very simple, but let's be honest, most of us, we focus on how can remediate when it comes to being able to give the kids the things that they're missing and just throwing in things so that they can do just a little bit better. This was an awesome, awesome talk. I really enjoyed. I learned personally and professionally. And I think this concept of doing right for our kids and having a positive association and what our roles are as parents is something that we really, really focus on in this awesome, awesome message. As always, please like and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. If you have any ideas, comments, or questions regarding this podcast, or if you would like to book a session so we can continue this conversation in a more intimate, personal basis, please reach out to parentingiseasypodcast@gmail.com. I am your host, Chananya Abram, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. I believe that when it comes to kids being able to learn, there's a certain level of confidence they need to have internally. And when they don't have that, there's a level of, I'm not good enough. And that can show itself in so many ways when it comes to going to the next grade or the next school or any sort of form of academics in general. So I think that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to speak to you about, talking about this concept of language in general, and what are the things that, I guess, starting off like
Mhm.
this, what are the things that us as parents should be looking out for when it comes to making sure that our kids are getting what they need on their level in the grades that they are in?
Well, the first thing is you want to know how they're going out the door. Um, you know, are they looking forward to school? Are they not looking forward to school? Are they beating themselves up? How do they feel when you mention school to them? I am. Uh, I loved your the title of your podcast. Parenting is easy. I'm a parent of five. My wife and I have been married for 43 years. We talk about language. I want to tell you the biggest misnomer that's out in the world today. Not only are we married for 43 years and had five children, four of which have been married. Have you ever heard the phrase boomerang children?
Yes.
No. I threw them
If
all
you don't
out. They
mind
all came back.
explaining it to the listeners.
A boomerang child is you throw them out and they come back and they come back with more. So my wife and I are blessed. Actually, we're blessed in the sense that that they chose to come back, and not only have they come back, they've come back with son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws. And we have 3 months ago, we just celebrated the birth of our 14th grandchild, ranging in age from 15 to obviously 3 months. They all live within 5 miles of our house. So the biggest misnomer that my wife and I have heard in terms of a term that has no meaning whatsoever is the term empty nester. Um, we're literally restarting again. So we have many kids that of our grandchildren who are back in school, and so it refreshes me because I see it firsthand, and I can tell you some firsthand experiences of some of them that that have had difficulty, and how we were able to help them based on my practice, my methodology, my approach, and also my research.
So when it comes to, I guess you say, the failure to read, and I think, I love that the first thing you're talking about is not necessarily reading, but it's like, how are they? Where are they holding physically?
Yes,
Where are
absolutely.
they in a way where when it comes to them leaving the house, like you said, and especially if the home is a place where they feel safe, they feel like, this is my place, this is my home. So we have to make sure as parents that we're in a place where we are giving to kids what they need. So if they're feeling insecure, they're feeling not good about themselves when they leave the house, what's happening? Why is that happening? Which is a topic we talk about.
Yeah,
Well,
something's happening. Something
exactly.
is happening there, and it's far too easy to blame the child without looking at the system. So one of the things when I created this, I created my methodology, and I called it failure free for a specific reason. I'm a former classroom teacher, university professor, school psychologist, special ed director. I've been involved now for, I hate to say it, but over 60 years in education. So I've seen it for a variety of different angles. But in that 60 years, there's certain things that never change. One of the biggest thing I saw was the fact that we're underestimating the ability level of chronically struggling kids. That the enemy is not the parent, it's not the teacher, it's not the administrator, and it's certainly not the student. The enemy is the inappropriateness of the instructional approach and how it pertains to the unique needs of those kids. So what we're saying is that it's too easy to blame the child, or it's too easy to blame the parent, or it's too easy to blame the teacher. But you have to look at the overall environment in which they're in. And when I created this program based on solid research. But the most important thing is I created it first and foremost as a reading attitude adjustment program to help these kids. And I can give you a couple examples in a second, but I'll take a breath and ask you, how am I doing so far? And are we going in the direction that you anticipated?
Yeah, yeah. I like the way this is going. Obviously, I want it to be more than just like a question and answer. I want it to be like a discussion, and just talking about, I think the biggest thing that's resonating for me so far from what you're saying is obviously there's an immense amount of experience, and I would say for the people that are listening to this, and myself included, probably more than most of us, when it comes to education, when it comes to specifically the reading. And obviously there's been a lot of passion having 5 kids, and I could relate to that. My wife and I having 5 kids as well. I think there's a lot when it comes to being able to us as parents give over to our kids, that we have to be very careful, because we might have one that is, let's call the top of the class, and we might have another one
Yes.
that might be just a little bit off the top of the class,
Yes.
to say it
Or
nicely.
some that are not at the top of the class at all. And that's one of the things that you've got to be aware of. You got to be aware of what I call the label makers.
Okay, so as
And
parents, as what's our role when it comes to being able to give everyone what they need without, and at the same time also building up the confidence in what each child needs?
now, the first thing you have to understand is that every one of your children are different. So what worked for one does not necessarily work for another. It's a constant changing of the recipe based on the needs of the kids. One of the things that I want to share with you is that I want to talk about the whole concept of neurodiversity. And what my research showed is that far too often we look at weakness as opposed to looking at strengths. If your child's having difficulty in school, it's too easy to assume that the problem is your child.
Okay, could you
What
can
you
you
have
first
to look at,
explain what neurodiversity is and how this pertains to our
neurodiversity
conversation?
is very, very easy. I'll put it in everyday terms. Um, we're all born with a series of strengths. We're also born with a series of weaknesses. Neurodiversity is the fact that you have to tap into your child's strength as opposed to constantly remediating their weakness. So neurodiversity is the notion that no two individuals on the face of this planet learn exactly alike. And our goal as a parent is to find out what is the best way to allow our child to succeed. And the first way is look at how are they learning? What is their
Mm,
style, so to speak? We know that there are some kids that are auditory learners. You know, you talk to them and they don't miss a word. They understand that way. They love to be talked to. They love to have an explanation, and that explanation be oral. You have other kids who are visual learners. They don't want to hear it. They want to see it. They want to watch it. They understand it that way. Then you have the touchers. You have the kids that don't want to hear it and they don't want to see it, but they want to do it. It's kind of like my wife and I have been married for 43 years. I know you'll find it hard to believe, but I love to talk, and but I don't have a mechanical mind. That's not my strength. So if there's something if there's an issue with the car, or if there's an issue with if we have a manual or something, I give it to my wife because she understands that. Don't tell me because that's not my style. Now, if there are other things that she doesn't understand, then and it's in my style, it goes from there. So you have to look at the concept of style. So how does this revert to school? And again, my expertise is if you look at the teaching of reading, and you were to take the 12 leading reading researchers on the face of this planet, put them into a single room with one exit and entrance, with an armed guard at at that door, and say you cannot come out until you have a universal definition of what reading is and how it should be taught, they would starve to death before they ever came out the door. There is a broad range of opinion as to that. There is no universal. Now, that said, what does that mean? It means that if there is one universal reading research fact that you can take to the bank, it's that all reading programs have value, but not for all students.
Right. Each
My whole
individual.
life is different. My whole life is centered on what I call the 30% fact. I've clocked well over 2 million hours of direct tutoring in sites across the country. Um, Thousands of teachers, tens of thousands of kids. And my work is with the kid or with the adult that is not responding to conventional instruction. What do you do with I'm pulling my hair out at the roots. I don't know what to do with my child is driving me crazy kid. Well, that's when you start looking at where is he or where is she going crazy. If it's in the area of reading and they're not doing well, the first thing you have to ask is what's the approach? What's going on? What is the primary approach? See, we deal too easily with slogans, or we deal with notions that there's only one way to fly, when in reality there is no one way to fly. Now, right now, you hear a lot about phonics, 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 phonics. The reason why your kids aren't doing well is they haven't been taught phonics. And if they're taught phonics, then all life is good. No. Am I anti-phonic? The answer is no. But I
It
will
might not
show
be the
you
only
large
way.
numbers. I will show you large numbers of kids that you can go k, and they'll go k, and you'll dance around the room going cat. And finally you'll say the words cat, and the kid will say, why didn't you tell me so in the first place? Or kids who have been drilled in the teaching of phonics. And so they've learned how to decode strange words. But when you listen to them read, they're not pausing at commas. They're not stopping at periods. They're reading with a monotone, expressionless voice. And you ask them what they read, even though they're getting 99% of the words right, they look you dead in the eye and say, I don't know.
Right. The comprehension is not there, like, at all. Yeah, that brings up a very, very good point. And when we talk about instilling discipline when it comes to the struggling that kids are having, I'm curious, when there's overwhelming pressure that's coming from the school, the home, how can we make sure that it doesn't that overall need and want to learn is still instilled in them without it sort of, burning them out? And also keeping in mind that there's parents involved, there's a school involved. So there has to be like a sort of level system when it comes to teaching that discipline and giving them over what it is that they need. And how can parents collaborate properly with the school or the tutors, and also obviously the child, in a way where everyone knows what their role is and everyone knows what they have to focus on and what they need to do, but yet also instilling a life lesson of, let's say, discipline and perseverance together with this struggling reader.
Yeah, well, the first thing is your kid smiling?
Okay.
If they ain't smiling, then it ain't right. Okay. And you can go to every expert on the face of the planet, but if the kid does not look forward to going, is crying before they're going at the thought of going to school. And here, let me give you an example. I was I taught at a major university, and I ran a summer clinic. right? And that
Mm,
was for chronically struggling kids of all ages, all discipline, all economics. And in particular, there was one boy that really caught my attention. He came in every day and he always wore a baseball cap on. And he was 7 years old. He was a rising second grader, I believe. Rise, meaning that he had just finished first grade. But he intrigued me because he always came, never missed time, always had that baseball cap on. So I asked myself this question. Well, let me find out a little bit about him. This is what I found out. I found out that he was a virtual non-reader. Now, let me share with you this. There really is no such thing as a non-reader. Everybody can read some. But when looked at in comparison to their peers, they're so far behind their virtual non-readers. And you have some that don't have a reading vocabulary of 50 words or less. And this particular boy fell into that category. And so I also found out that he had been in kindergarten, was retained, went into first grade, and is on the verge of being retained again. And if he didn't do well in this
summer
summer
program.
clinic, he'd be retained. Hmm? Given that information that I just gave you, let me ask this question. Why do you think he wore that baseball cap?
Well, I think the first thing that came to mind, it gave him a certain sense of covering up embarrassment, of not wanting to be, and was a shield, as we would say in therapy, a protector of sorts.
And you would be absolutely correct, but you're incorrect. He wore this cap for a more utilitarian reason. You ready for this? He wore that cap to hide something. And do you know what he was hiding? He was hiding the fact that he had a condition known as localized balding, and his hair was literally falling out in clumps. Want to know what causes it?
Stress.
Mhm. In that same clinic, I had an 8-year-old girl who had an ulcer. And again, a virtual non reader. Every day that girl would go to school trying the best she can. And the teacher had a philosophy at that time that if she didn't do well, she had to sit up in the front of the room on this special stool and read aloud.
Okay, so so then you're getting into social anxieties, then you're getting into learning traumas, then you're getting into a whole school trauma possibly as well, and then a child will want to just protect themselves and put themselves in a place like, you know what, I don't need this, I don't want this. Let me just go to my cartoons and comics that don't have any words to it, so that I can just float through things and maybe survive possibly without having any sense of being a part of the classroom or
Now
anything
you've got
else.
a situation where politically, you've got a situation where concerned legislators across the country, over half of the legislators across the country, are being told that there's only one way to fly, and if you don't catch the kid by third grade, it's going to be too late. And so it's another situation where if the kid doesn't do well by third grade, the kid's going to be retained. Well, if you retain a child by third grade, you know what you do? You increase by a factor of 216% that student will drop out of school by age 16. When they drop out of school at age 16, you know where they're going? They're going to join the largest growing class in the United States. You know what that is? The underclass.
The dropout school.
Okay, so you go into a situation. Let me for the parents and to you. Let me give you this analogy. You're in Manhattan. You decide to jaywalk for whatever reason. You go out in the middle of the road and you get hit by a car. Now you're lying there and you're in pain and you are really, really hurting. But all of a sudden, you hear a siren in the back and you think they're coming. They're coming to help me. This is going to do it. And when the ambulance arrives and you're on your back waiting for the relief, you know what they do? They drive over you a couple of times and tell you that's what you get for being out in the middle of the road. It's a blaming of the victim. And the schools are all set up on what I call an RD philosophy as opposed to a CS philosophy.
Can you explain the
I
difference?
am going to do that right now. 99.9% of the interventions are out there designed on RD. And RD stands for the remediation of the deficit. The kid doesn't have a good ear for sounds. You know what we're going to give? We're going to give him more intensive phonics. If he doesn't get that, we'll put him in small group, giving him more phonics. And if that doesn't work, we'll hire private tutors specifically designed to teach one-on-one.
Orphonics. Okay, so what can
Wait a minute,
parents
I'm
do
not
to
done.
put
I
themselves in a
want to go to
place?
CS. CS is
Okay.
the key. My philosophy, if the kid doesn't get it, then we got to look at CS, and CS stands for capitalize on strengths. Capitalize on strengths. Their failure in the classroom is demonstrating that whatever's being used is not tapping into their unique learning style. And what we have to do is to move that style to something that 55 million people learned how to read for meaning with fluency and with expression using an alternative approach to phonics. Did you know that? In fact, yes, you did. I'm going to tell you. Dick and Jane. Have you ever heard of Dick and Jane?
You have to refresh my
You
memory.
are even
Not
younger
drawing
than
a
I
picture right now.
thought. Dick and Jane. C Spot Run. C Spot. Dick and Jane was a visually based reading approach based on repetition and visual exposure. And 55 million, my age, in the 40s, 50s, and early 60s, learned how to read. You know how many lessons of phonics they had, Dick and Jane? Not a single one. Now, am I anti-phonic? The answer is no. I go back to that 30%. If everybody jumped into Dick and Jane and started teaching visually, I'd be working with the 30% of the kids that don't have where sight isn't the way to go. And you know what I'd be pushing? Phonics. All that I'm saying is you got to look at your kids' strengths and then tap into that. And that's the best thing that parents can do. The first thing that they can do. I tell you ways in which to improve comprehension. I can give you some suggestions, some 3-word responses, all of that. Whenever you're ready, I'm ready to go or answer any questions.
Well, I'm more curious to hear about. Okay, so you have, let's say, a 7, 8 year old at home that we're getting some word from school that there might be some help needed outside of just the regular classroom. What type of questions should parents be asking when it comes to how to assess properly, the type of care that they should be getting, and what they should be doing at home?
Well, the first thing you have to ask is what are the issues that you're concerned about? Are they behavioral issues? Is he acting out? Is he being sent to the principal's office? Is there a situation where truancy? They're not coming to school. You have to ask what's going on behaviorally. The second is academically. What are you seeing in comparison to the other kids in the class? Where is he fitting? Is he in the top of the class? Is he in the middle of the class? Is he in the bottom of the class? And if he's in the bottom, is he in the bottom all the time, or is it in one particular subject, or is it in reading? What is it in reading that he can't do? Is it Is it that he can't sound words out? Is it that he can sound words out, but he can't comprehend? You've got to go in there and ask questions. Does that help?
Okay. Yes, that does. And I'm just continuing on that point of asking questions. When it comes to how we go about giving certain materials, or maybe certain materials not to give to our kids, that can really get in the way of how they're going to read and comprehend properly. Are there certain, whether it's type of books or maybe certain things that they shouldn't be doing at home?
Um, I think that it's very difficult as a parent to be a teacher. So
Well, that's not our role.
it's not our role, and so it's very hard to take off your parent hat and try to be a teacher hat. So that's number one. But there are certain things that a parent can do to help their child. Period. That the most important thing, other than making sure that they feel good about themselves and they're looking forward to going to school, if there is a one word secret to success and comprehension, would it be worth listening to me run my mouth to you today and your audience? Can I give you that one word secret that if you can follow up on this one secret, you will improve your child's academic career, and you also instill in them what they're going to need in life.
Well, if I had a break in middle of my things, I would say, "Guys, stay tuned for the one word, how that can help things." But, we don't have that around the podcast, but yeah, please, share.
Yeah, let me give it to you. It's vocabulary. Vocabulary. That if you want to do something from your child from day one, from womb, from birth on, um, enhance their vocabulary. Do everything you can to enhance their vocabulary. So how do you enhance? And remember this: input precedes output. Input precedes output. What that basically means is get as much language into the system. Don't worry if they don't express it. There's at least a 6 month developmental gap between what a child can understand and what a child can express. Your job as a parent,
Ooh, that's a very, very big point. That's a
it's a
very big
huge
point.
point because sometimes we don't give individuals enough time to assimilate. It's like this. When this session is done, hopefully somebody's going to say, "Well, how was that Lockavitch? Was he any good? Did you learn anything?" And you'll be honest, I assume. You'll say, "Well, I'll tell you the truth, he was one of the best guests I ever had. I learned more things from him. It was just outstanding." And then the person says, "Well, tell me a couple of things," and you go, and nothing comes out. And you go, and nothing really comes out. And the reason why nothing's coming out that way is you need time to assimilate it. It's not that it didn't come in, but you need time to put it into your repertoire so that you can put it in such a way that you can express it. So just because your child doesn't seem to be getting it doesn't mean they're not getting it.
Wow, I think I need to hear that a little more often. That sometimes it's my own frustration when it comes to studying with my kids, and it's not my kids' frustration. And they may have 20, 30 words that they have to do for their vocab test tomorrow. They're only getting 8 of them, and that's okay. And it's my job as a parent to be talking to the school, communicating with them regarding, "Hey, we worked for an hour last night," which is a long time for homework just on vocabulary. And then now they're going ahead and they're not getting certain things. That's okay. That's fine. It's my problem. And I know this is something I know that my teenage daughter taught me a long time ago, but daddy, that's a you problem. That's not a me problem. And I think as a parent, that's really important for us to remember that a lot of times when we have frustrations, whether it's with reading or some other behavioral stuff or maybe some other scholastic stuff, it's an us problem as a
Yeah,
parent.
you put
And it's not
pressure
necessarily a
onto.
problem of the child.
Yeah, see, one of the things I want to share with you then, as a parent, what I've learned as a parent, as a grandparent, and what I try to share. Oh, you got to trust in your child's capacity to learn. You just have to trust, okay? And because they're not demonstrating it right now, doesn't mean that it's not going on. And so the learning never stops. Your goal is to set the conditions. It's like being a gardener, okay? in one of my books, Faster, Higher, More, 44 Ways to Dramatically Improve Your Child's Ability. That'll be my second edition, by the way. But you got to think in terms of what you are is you're a gardener. You don't really teach anything. What you do is you set the conditions in which growth can occur. And the
Mm,
conditions are you don't want to berate them. You also, and I want your parents to understand this, and you know this as a therapist, but words are significant. Words are significant. And parents have to understand that they have to make sure that there's two ways to communicate with their child. That there's verbal and there's nonverbal. And what has to
mm,
be done is you have to have a congruent message. Now, what that basically means is this: you have to make sure that your words are backed up by your nonverbal actions. If you're sitting there and you're screaming at the top of your lungs, you're so angry, your body is so angry, you're saying, but I still love you. That ain't going to fly. You have to be able to match nonverbal with verbal. And here's the thing: you have to remember this, and I want every parent to remember this. If you don't have a match between what you are saying verbally and expressing non-verbally, the kid's going to go with non-verbal. Non-verbal always supersedes verbal.
yeah, 100% agree, and so many different ways, and that's why with little children, one of the first things they do, after baby's born, is they put it on the mom to sort of create and enhance that connection that they just had for as long as they did for those 7, 8, 9 months,
Yeah.
and it's really important to have that, and we as parents need to do that, and you remind me actually of my principal, my late principal from high school, and it's something we used to say about him, and we all met up like after by a ceremony like from my graduating class, and what we came out with was, he didn't always like us, but we always knew that he loved us. And, I think that's and he was doing right by us. If we skipped or if we did something we shouldn't have done, he got upset, as he should, he's a principal. But at the same time, he'd always be like, "Did you miss dinner? Did you not like dinner? Okay, I'll bring you back something later." And in the same sentence that he would scream at us, he would also make sure we had what we needed. So,
Yeah,
at the time, we didn't realize
this
it.
is that's why I like our dialogue. Let me share this with your parents as well, and with that what I tell my kids who are now parents, and I stress it all the time. I said it is perfectly acceptable for you as a parent or as a teacher or as anybody to to absolutely totally dislike inappropriate behavior, but it is never acceptable to dislike the behavior.
Yeah.
That
No,
is a
100%,
huge
100%.
distinction. And far too often people get they cross the line and
Sure.
they start attacking their child for what their child did. They don't have to like what the kid did, but they do have to like the kid. And that
Always.
gets me to my second point, that words do count. And parents have to understand that they are significant. They are probably the most significant people in the lives of their kids. And what that means is this: if you are significant in the life of your kid, you have to be extremely careful with your verbiage. Because if you say something like, that's dumb, do you know how many that's smarts you have to have in order to counteract it?
Yep, the thousands,
At least
thousands.
100 to 1
Yeah,
because of
yeah,
your
that makes perfect
significance.
sense.
So you have to understand that words are dangerous and they're harmful. And you can't just say, well, I yelled at him yesterday, but today I told him I gave him a hug. Well, that's nice.
No, 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 no.
But
That's not
why the hell
enough.
did you yell at
That's
him
not enough.
anyhow? You now you can
Yeah.
be specific, and I did this with my kids, and I do it with my grandchildren. I said, you know, I don't like the way you just talk to your mother. You were loud, you were rude, you were inconsiderate, and I'm not going to tolerate that behavior. That ain't flying in front of me or in front of this house. Do you understand that that behavior, now let me put it in a word you can understand, is lousy? It's bad. But let me also tell you something. I'll always love you. I don't like that, but I'll always love you. That's a huge difference.
100%. And that's why on my website for CUA therapy, we actually the main slogan that you see when you come on is how do you like your kids as much as you love them? And it's to that point specifically. And I heard it from a mentor of mine of it has to be at least 4 to 1 positive to negative things to our kids. So for every 4 positive things we say to our kids, you could say one, I don't like when you do that, at least. And that's a very, very minimum. And when you think about it, let's use an example of, let's say, a kid comes home from school, they have a snack, mom's preparing dinner, and they want to go take one more cookie before dinner. Now, mom gets upset because, like, why are you taking a cookie? Or we're about to have dinner. So now she gets so upset. Now, is she upset at the child eating? No, it's not upset at the child eating. She's upset the child might ruin their appetite, and therefore they're doing something not good, and therefore they're taking the cookie. But if the child, all they hear is this action, what you're doing makes you a bad person, that's going to create a internal belief of there's something wrong with me. Now, that's not what we want. We want it to be like, what you're doing right now is something you shouldn't be doing because we're about to have this. Take a drink of water, relax, come back into the kitchen in 5 minutes, and we'll eat together. I need a few more minutes. And I think is when we give over that message. And I want to bring this back to the reading here. So, you sort of answer the question of how can we this concept of literacy, how can it create a bridge to other lessons in life? And I think this is, that was a big question I really wanted to talk to you about, but we're talking about it without asking you the question because I think it's so important to be able to have that sense of I'm here, I'm in your corner, I'm always going to be in your corner, I'm never going anywhere, and we're going to work with this. And it's very important for that to happen. One of the ways we do that, and one of the ways I tell parents the way they could enhance to make sure that the concept of love is always going to be there and that they know you're in the corner, is to create a specific event or thing that you do together. It could be once a week the shopping for dog food. It could be a coffee run on Sundays. It could be as simple as just bringing down the
So let's
garbages.
tie to reading.
And
And let me,
so, like, those type of
yeah,
things, what we do is what I tell parents is that no matter what that you do with your child, whether it's a certain TV show that you watch or you're doing the Costco run, no matter what happened 5 minutes before that, you still do that thing with them,
that's
no
right.
matter
Don't
what.
stop it.
And I think that's really, really important when it comes to making sure that the bond is still there, even though the action is something that I frown upon.
I want to pick up on that because I think it's excellent. I think that what I recommend is 20 to 30 minutes of reading every day to your child, and reading for enjoyment, reading to enhance vocabulary, reading to discuss. One of the things, because comprehension is the issue, right? One, number one, the greater the vocabulary, the greater the comprehension. Number two, let me and input precedes output. So those are three words that you can share with your parents. Now, let me give you one more, and that is reading is relating. Reading is relating. Now, what that basically means is you have to, when you're reading, when you're discussing, you have to ask, do they understand what this topic is about? If they don't understand what the topic is about, then you have to ask, is there something that I can get them to understand that will allow them to understand this? Can I tie it into uh, into their background, into their experience? So the goal of a parent is always the enemy is not the child. In many ways, the enemy is the text. That
Mm.
you have to ask, what I'm putting down here, is this something that my child can understand? Because if my child can't understand it, then I can't read it. Is this helpful?
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's a point like you were just saying. It's about actually separating the child from the issue or separating the child from the action, and it doesn't change in that sense regarding what our
And look at the
responsibilities
tool,
are.
look at what you're using,
Yeah.
because many times what you have is you don't have a good fit. You don't have a good fit between what you want to discuss and what your child brings to the task. So, what you have to ask is read the eyes. There's another three words, read the eyes, because the eyes are the mirror of the mind. If you're reading something and you clearly see that the eyes are being glossed over, the kid doesn't understand, you got to stop. And you have to ask that question, okay, why does my child not understand this? What is going on here? Is there a word that's been used that they don't understand? Is it figurative speech that they don't understand? Is it a topic that there's no way that they can understand it? Then you have to ask, can I bridge something? Can I discuss something that they've done that will allow me to bridge this so that they can understand it? If you get to the point where you're reading and reading and reading and all you're getting is glossed over or they don't want to do it, close the book. It ain't working.
And I think that to the point of the tracking, I was thinking about something a little bit different. I know having to take one of my kids for to a reading a specialist, and what we noticed is his tracking was at a point where he was going to jumping to the next word before he finished the word before. And I went and then there's a separate part as well where they go back and look at the end of the word before they go back and continue reading the word forward. And I think it's fairly common in young kids, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and I know at least for whatever the number actually is, and I remember the actual number of what is considered average for a paragraph. My son was doing it double that, which meant that we had to change glasses. There were some therapeutics we had to go through in order to assist with that, and that's what I think about regarding tracking. And as you were talking, so what sort of came to mind for me is electronics nowadays and the whole way of the way kids learn and the way absorb things, the way absorb information is very different today than it was in 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious, how can we use it to our advantage, knowing that their eyes are moving around? I think it's fair to say more than they were in the 50s and 60s when it came to how they're absorbing information.
Well, it's more disjointed because that's the way it's set up.
Correct.
You're not going on a simple left to right progression. You're really going you're going all over because that's the way they present the screen.
So how
I
can we use
go on.
electronics today? How can we use what we have available to us today to our advantage?
Well, one of the things you have to understand that when programmed properly, the one thing that software can do that we don't do is it doesn't berate. It doesn't get angry with you. It can instill confidence if it's good software, if it's structured, if it's something that is beneficial to them, if it's going to enhance uh, their persona and also their vocabulary. That's what um,
But
there are just so many variables.
yeah, for sure. Are there any specific like programs or like apps that you've seen that could be of benefit?
Yeah, there's one called Failure Free Reading. Uh, www.failurefreereadingonline.com. One of the things we do is we do um, a quick assessment to see where your kid is at. And a lot of times you find out that we're not reaching their true potential. I
Mm,
have a program that's out there for called Verbal Master, which is an accelerated vocabulary program that I'm very, very proud of. It's a multisensory approach, and especially for middle and high school kids. So I would recommend looking at that. But I'm not here to sell failure free reading. I'm here to help the parents. So I want to go back to the parents. You're a language teacher first. You're a reading teacher second. You're a content teacher third. You have to be able to understand that your messages have to be congruent and it has to be positive. Don't confuse the behavior with the behavior.
mm.
Those type of things.
Yeah.
It's really not that difficult.
It's also difficult. I think it's a mixture of both because sometimes we have a certain frustration. I think something that I see a lot is, parents living vicariously through their kids and wanting their kids to have certain accolades and certain accomplishments and do certain things, go a certain way that they didn't get a chance to do. So they and it's coming from a place of love and wanting the best for their kid. Hopefully, also taking into consideration the kid themselves and what they need and want.
That's the big thing. Yeah, I saw that with both of my boys, for example. I always wanted to play sports. I was reasonably well, but they were really good. And they could have been even better. They could have gone Division 1, all of that. And then they decided they didn't want to do it. Well, it tore my heart out. But the reality is that that's what they wanted to do. And so as a parent, sometimes, yeah, you can live vicariously and it's wonderful when things are good, but you got to let them go you got to let them go their own road.
Yeah, and
That's
I think that's important, and our job is to be that support for them, and when we talk about success, obviously there's so many different ways to view and to assess what actually success looks like in our kids. And I'm curious as we sort of wrap this up over here. I mean, I still have probably half my questions I didn't get a chance to ask you, but just I think
well, I'd
the
like to
way
pick up on the notion of success too, and I
so
want to share
here's
this
my
with
question that
parents.
that I have with you when it comes to success. When you think about success when it comes to raising our children who struggle specifically with reading, what do you see and what should success look like from the eyes of the parent? And how can we also like shift the narrative away from that societal pressure and towards something that is much more meaningful when it comes to making sure our kids are in the best position possible for themselves?
Again, it comes back to, are they happy? Are they happy? I mean, are they looking for? Do they feel good about themselves? Um, you know, Even if they're getting all A's, if they're going to school and they're miserable, if they just if for whatever reason it's not good enough to the parent and they're feeling that, that just doesn't make any sense. I think there's a tendency to push too much too soon too fast.
So slow
What
down.
I
You're saying we should be slowing down more.
take a damn breath. Let them live. Okay, so your kid's getting all A's, and they're throwing up in the bathroom. What the hell good is the all A's? What does and then this notion of cocktail hour, that don't mean crap. All right. Um, the fact, one of the biggest things I see over and over and over again, oh, my kid's reading blah 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 in kindergarten or first grade. Let me tell you something what the research says. All right. The research says they can read. The kids that start reading at 5 and 6 years old, and kids that are starting to read at 7 and 8 year old, when it comes out in the wash down the road, there ain't a damn difference between the kid that started to read early as opposed to the kid that started to read a little bit later. So why do we always have to push it? What, to enhance our own image in the eyes of our friends?
That's very selfish.
And all I'm saying is this: look at your kid at night. Are they happy? Are they happy? Do they feel good about themselves? Or do they have a spirit of willingness to try? What can you do? What are their strengths? Are you tapping into things that are good? Are you tapping into the kids who are none? I'm a former school psychologist. I used to get, and in IQ is a relative term. Now I hear people go, "Oh, he's got an IQ of 140, an IQ 150." Who cares? If you can imagine a picket fence and you're walking down the street and you've got a stick and it's clicking on every picket, all right? The reality is, if you can imagine that picket fence and it only goes down to about 10 or 15 pickets, every picket is a form of intelligence, but it's infinite. So when we do an intelligence test, we're only measuring certain variables.
Right.
And so sometimes we use a number and we don't give kids the opportunity. Oh, my kid's low average or average. Who cares? What are they good at? How do they feel about themselves? It'll all come out in the wash. The most successful people in life are the C plus B minus kids.
It's something I've experienced firsthand, both as a parent and as someone that's been in school and, where I'm holding in life, which I guess is nowhere near
Yeah.
the season that you have, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, let me also talk about success. One of the things that people don't understand is you got me on a roll now. But one of the things that that people don't understand is you got far too many people that believe that success is the absence of failure. That's the biggest myth that's out there. Every successful person on the face of this planet has failed. The question is not why did they fail? The question is what did they do when they failed?
How did they get
And
back
we've
up?
got a lot.
Yeah.
Did they get back up? And as Frank said, pick yourself up and get back in the race. That's life. Or did they wallow in self pity for the rest of their life? You've got friends, we've got people out there that we know that failed in their mid 30s and they're still failing in their 50s and 60s because they never picked themselves up. What we have to tell the kid is if he failed, okay, you failed, I failed. Now, what do we need to do now that we failed? What do we need to do to go forward? It's okay to fail. Don't wallow in it. Is this helpful?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and obviously, I would like to pick your brain even more of it, but unfortunately, we're out of time over here. I'm curious as we sort of wrap it up for right now. Is there any one specific point that stands out to you that maybe we didn't talk about today that you feel like should be something that you would like everyone to know?
Yeah, I think we have to talk about adolescence and we have to talk about what do you do with the kids in those middle and upper grades that are failing
All right, let's
and
see
not
if we
doing
can get that into like what 1 or 2 minutes over here as we have to wrap it up for today.
okay, the enemy is the text. In most cases, you have to ask why are they failing and what is it that's preventing them from relating? And then what can we do? What can we do to help them relate to the thing? It's like a lot of times in science, social studies, and math, one of the things that we have is kids are failing because they don't understand the topic presented through the textbook. And what I like to tell a lot of times is you don't use the textbook to introduce, you use the textbook to reinforce what you've discussed prior to it. The more they know about a topic prior to it, to reading it, the better they will be able to understand it as they read it. So again, reading is relating. Input precedes output. Um, Language first. Vocabulary, 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 and never give up. Never give up.
Amazing. Yeah, I think you really touched on so many things. We could probably have a whole talk just on this last point that you were just talking about over here. But I like ending our talks with a few light questions over here, and I'm curious if you can recommend a book other than anything that you've been a part of that parents can get more information on this, or maybe even a book also that kids can read to help them get more engaged and learn more about their own confidence.
Oh boy. Let me think about that. It's not popping up, and I rather than just sit here with dead silence, I'd like to think about it.
Okay.
I will tell the parents that one of the things that I think is expose them to sophisticated language. Don't be afraid to read at higher levels with your kids. The greater the language, the greater the success. But remember to make sure that you're relating it in such a way. Let them see that you have a love for reading. That you always use language. The biggest problem is a lot of times we think, well, if they're reading at a first grade level, they can't understand it at a sixth or a seventh grade level, and that's not true. So never underestimate their ability. In many cases, they don't need slower, lower, and less. What they need is faster, higher, and more.
No,
Um,
very, very well said in that sense. And my last question for you right now, if you can think of a everyday mundane superpower that you would like to have as a parent and or a grandparent, what would that be, Dr. Joe?
Capacity to, I think we all have to learn how to forgive.
Mm,
That
grudges.
um, don't hold grudges, and it's done. Okay, one of the things I like to say is when you get in your car, um, look at the size discrepancy between your windshield as you go forward and your rear view mirror as you look in the back. And we're spending too much time looking at what was as opposed to what is. Um, your kids are unlimited. You're unlimited. Don't judge yourself on where you're coming from. You've got to look at where you're going to. It's okay to make a mistake. Learn from it and move forward. Find what you do best. And here's the other one that I would share with you: do what you love, and the money will follow.
Mm, beautiful.
Oh,
Very, very, very well said over here. I'm curious if you could just, for the audience, maybe tell us people how they can contact you and get in touch and hear more about you.
yeah, www.failurefree, failurefree reading.com. My email is joe, Lockavitch, at failurefree, failurefree.com. When you go to the website, if you really do have a child, I would love to. There is a time where you can set up a consultation where we can talk. But if you're going to do it, don't waste my time in terms of don't do it just because you're going to do it. Do it because you have issues, and I'd love to help you.
Awesome. Amazing. This has been absolutely amazing, Joe, and I hope we can have further contact going forward.